Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Avalanche, in which the Sharks have lost 4-3. So the good news, it was an improved performance from their first meeting against the Avalanche, in which they were pretty much significantly outplayed and got shut out. But of course, the bad news is the Sharks did, in fact, still lose this game. Now, they were better than they were the previous night against the Ottawa Senators. The bad news, I guess, being that the Avalanche are a significantly better team than Ottawa, so the Sharks would still end up losing. But they did a decent job at limiting the Avalanche's chances. But one of the reasons why the Avalanche find themselves near the top of the Central Division and near the top of the Western Conference as a whole is because the few chances that they do get, with the help of players like McKinnon and Landeskog, they are able to bury them. So the Sharks, they didn't give too much to the Avalanche, but the chances they did give ended up in the back of their net more often than not. Now, this game did start off with the Sharks getting the first goal. That would be Joe Thornton on the power play, but McKinnon would answer to make it 1-1, and Landeskog would then eventually make it 2-1. Melker Karlsson on a breakaway would tie it up at 2 before Namestnikov would make it 3-2, and that would be the score at the end of 2 periods. Come third period, neither team was generating all too much in terms of chances, but it would be Jonas Donskoi, former San Jose Sharks, getting the goal in the last few minutes of the third period as sort of a dagger, and while Gregor would make it interesting in the last minute or so on another power play to make it 4-3 and bring it to within 1, it was too little too late for the Sharks, and they ended up dropping this one. First thing to talk about would be Martin Jones. He, of course, gets the start here tonight after Dell got the start the previous night against the Ottawa Senators, and Jones was okay, I guess. There were a couple of good saves on some of these Avalanche chances, and the first 3, it's hard to fault him. He had no chance on the McKinnon goal. He probably could have potentially had this rebound on the Landeskog goal, but he did have to make a save on a McKinnon breakaway, so hard to fault him too much. And it was a tough save on Namestnikov, but you do need to have Jones be able to make this save on Donskoi at this juncture of the game, down 1 goal in the last 4.5 minutes. It's not a especially difficult save to make. It's not an easy one, but it's not a difficult one. And you need your goaltender to make those saves, and while it hasn't happened so much in the past few games, it has been the case a lot this season with Jones earlier on, where he just doesn't necessarily come up with those late game saves to keep the Sharks alive and with a good chance. And so when it comes to the following game on Wednesday against the Blackhawks, will it be Dell? Will it be Jones? I'd say it's anyone's guess. You could maybe put some money on Dell getting the start, but it also wouldn't surprise me to see Jones between the pipes once more. Next, I'll talk about Timo Meier, probably the most consistent forward for the Sharks in the past few games, maybe competing with someone like Thornton, who's also been quite good. But a lot of, I guess you could say, problems with Meier's game is that he seems to be able to set up the chances for himself, but he lacks the finish to actually be able to convert and get those goals. I mean, there's been, just in the past 3 games, he's been, a top Sharks forward, and there have been so many chances for him. He could have probably had maybe 4 goals in these past 3 games, and yet he's left with none because he just can't seem to bury on the opportunities that he is setting up for himself. It kind of reminds me of Tomas Hertl a couple seasons ago before he really broke out into a 70-plus point scorer, where he was a player who had all that flash, but just not enough finish. And so when it comes to Meier, he's been very good as of late. He's been racking up points. He had a couple of assists here tonight, but I'd like to see him be able to finish a bit more. I mean, we saw him on a one-timer on a basically open net on the power play. He missed it on that scenario. He ended up hitting the post on a good opportunity at some point as well. And so if he can start to convert on some of these chances, he could end up hitting the 30-goal mark this season. Next, I'll talk about the Sharks power play, which has been much improved as of late. Of course, this was a huge problem early on, especially with DeBoer. It was extremely stagnant, it was extremely predictable, and it was just a very dry power play. And it's not like it's been so much better under Booner. Really, I believe it's remained around the same spot in the NHL, but it has been improving in the past couple of games. There has been more movement. Of course, there have been more bounces going the Sharks' way, but I have liked some of the chemistry that they are finding on this power play, and even without Hertl, even without Karlsson. Thornton's looking good as a bit of a setup man now. We've had Burns doing very good job of quarterbacking the power play, as we know he is capable of, holding pucks in. He's been very good at that as well. Kane has been extremely strong in front of the net, and so the power play has been improved. They got another couple goals here tonight from Thornton and Gregor, and hopefully that's a trend that can continue in the last dozen or so games of this season. And finally, I'll talk about Kuznetsov once more here for the Sharks. He got another opportunity in this game. I was, somewhat surprised about that, although I guess the Sharks don't really have too many options. And he was basically unnoticeable in this game. I mean, if you told me that the Sharks dressed 5 defensemen in this one, I probably would have believed you, because I basically only saw him one single time, I guess you could say. And honestly, that's probably a good thing compared to the previous game against the Ottawa Senators, where he was very noticeable in a bad way. It's nice to see him having really settled in, not really making any standout defensive errors, and just trying to keep it a very simple game, even though he didn't even hit the 10-minute mark in terms of ice time. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action on Wednesday. They'll face off against the Chicago Blackhawks, a team the Sharks have already beaten twice this season. Of course, that first victory came in the first game of the season for Patrick Marleau after they had signed him from free agency, considering they lost the first couple of games of the year. And the second one was just a pretty simple victory. And so we'll see if the Sharks can close out the season series with the Blackhawks with the perfect 3-0 sweep. Class dismissed.